Welcome back, guys. A little bit of change of scenery today. Adelaide has absolutely turned it on with the weather. So we're going to do a bit more of a Q&A today. I've had a few questions come in from my social media, and two things I really love. For anyone that knows me, I love Q&As and I love caffeine, particularly coffee. So why not combine them both? So what we'll do today, we'll start off some questions here. As the caffeine kicks in, the pace might pick up a little bit as well. We'll end up going for a little bit of a stroll too. So thank you for everyone that has written in with your questions. If you ever do have a question, just feel free to reach out at any stage on the YouTube channel, on the social media channels. It's something that I love to do. So without further ado, let's get stuck into them. There's some absolutely cracking questions in here as well. So first one. Something you've changed your mind about in the bodybuilding and fitness industry? Really good question. And this one, like obviously in the last few years, we've seen massive changes, particularly since COVID, with the online coaching space absolutely blowing up. I think if we talk about it from a bodybuilding standpoint and where my views have changed, when I first started this back in like 2007, it was that old school bodybuilding era where there was no social media, everything was really raw. You'd get your information from either the older bloke in the gym wearing the stringer or the bodybuilding magazines. And I used to have about 3 subscriptions that would come every single month. So that's where I would learn most of my workout routines. It's where I would get inspired. You know, you'd see Jay Cutler's chest workout or you'd see Ronnie Coleman's back workout. And back then, it was, I guess when it comes to the nutrition side of things, it was totally different, right? It was all about the chicken, rice, and broccoli, the beef and sweet potato. Everything was a bit more of a hardcore lifestyle. So that's how I grew up, and that's when my values established, was back in that day of kind of the hardcore bodybuilding. So I used to think that to get the best results possible, you had to eat like that. So it was the oats and egg whites for meal 1. The chicken, rice, and broccoli for meal number 2. Meal number 3 was the kangaroo and the sweet potato. Meal number 4 was the fish and the salad, because fish would make your skin thinner. So there was a lot of myths back then that now, obviously, as the sport has grown and evolved, science has come out and debunked. So I think nowadays one of the biggest things I've changed my opinion on is nutrition. I'm a still big and a huge advocate of whole foods. Personally, I find my body does best off low to no dairy and low to no gluten, plenty of fresh fruit and veg, a good variety of lean protein sources, so not just using the same protein for each meal, so not just using and relying upon something like chicken breast. I think for the diversity of your gut microbiome, variety is key. So mixing up your protein choices. Personally, I find the lower GI carbohydrates sit a little bit better in my stomach. There is still a time and place for things like your simple sugars, but I think a good rule for your nutrition nowadays is like 80-20. 80% of those whole foods, 20% of those foods you can get a little bit more flexible with. So nutrition has been a big one that my opinion has changed on. Training over the years has changed as well. You know, back in the day, it was about more is better. So more sets, more weight, which there is some truth to that, of course, but now with more and more research coming out and science coming out, we are becoming more aware of the amount of volume that we can actually recover from. So when you first start training, and when you're a young buck like me, I was 18, so you can throw a lot at the body and you'll get a response. It's kind of like just throwing shit at a wall and hopefully something sticks, and it will, because your testosterone levels are high, you can recover really, really well. You bounce back from training. Like I used to go to footy training, then I'd go to the gym, then I'd probably run off 6 or 7 hours sleep. Then the next day I might go motocross riding. And what you could do back then and get away with is now a lot different to what I can do now at 36. So nowadays there's a much bigger emphasis on recovery. And that is one of the biggest things that my opinion has changed on to get the best results possible, is not just more is better in the gym, but better is better. So the execution of your movements, how your technique is, are you actually targeting that tissue that you're trying to stimulate? For example, if it's a bench press or a dumbbell chest press, are you able to isolate that chest as much as possible? Of course, you're going to get a little bit of anterior delt and tricep in there as well. But back when I first started, it was about, all right, well, if that guy's doing 60, I got to do 70. And then the week after, if he's doing 80, I've got to do 85. And it just became about brute force and how much you could bury yourself in the gym. Whereas now, my mindset's changed a lot in that, okay, yes, intensity and effort is still paramount, but take the time to prioritize your technique. Learn about the biomechanics, learn how to stimulate that muscle, and prioritize your rest and recovery. So the one takeaway I think for everyone out there is do not neglect your rest and recovery, because no matter how hard you train in the gym, no matter how well you eat, unless you have that rest and recovery dialed in, your results will be limited. Question 2. I get this one all the time. Fasted cardio versus fed cardio. Which is better for fat loss? The easiest way to explain this one is, imagine you've got a bank account with $100 in it. Now, whether you spend $20 in the morning or you spend $20 in the evening, your bank account balance is still going to be the same. It's still going to be $80. So when it comes time to fed versus fasted cardio, which one's better for fat loss? The research has shown to us that it really doesn't matter. That whether you do it first thing in the morning upon rising at 6 a.m. with a bit of caffeine and no food in the belly, or if you do it post-workout after having 4 meals throughout the day, the fat loss benefits will be the same, because overall it comes down to your calorie expenditure in a 24-hour window. That being said, there's always nuances. So personally, I find fasted cardio feels better for me, especially if I'm going to be doing something like high intensity interval training. There's nothing worse than when you're trying to really jack your heart rate up and you've got a full belly. The last thing you want is discomfort through the GI tract or feelings of nausea kicking in, and therefore limiting your output and your intensity that you can essentially get from that movement. So let's say we're using intervals on a bike. We're going as fast as we can for 20 seconds, and then we have 40 seconds recovery. If you're trying to do that on a full stomach, I guarantee you will be limited as to how hard you can push, because generally something like the nausea is going to be a contributing factor. If you do that first thing in the morning, that generally isn't the case. So there are nuances to this. Now, again, in the era that I grew up of bodybuilding, everyone would say fasted cardio is best for fat loss. So for me, it's still ingrained in my mind that whenever I'd get up, I'd have my caffeine. It was Thermo Fuel by Gentech back then, and some acetyl-L-carnitine, and I'd go for my power walk fasted. I still like to do that because there's something about setting your day up with, I think, something that gets the blood flowing, the oxygen circulating around the body, and the caffeine as well, of course. And for me, I still like to do that style of cardio fasted. So find what works best for you, but in terms of overall fat loss, they are the same. This one's a really good question. How to be an athlete and still have a good relationship with your girlfriend. So let's reframe this one a little bit and think, we'll generalize it a little bit more. How do you be at the top of your game and still have a successful relationship with a significant other? Now, I think first and foremost, the key to any successful relationship, and disclaimer, I'm not a relationship coach, but I think the key is communication. Whether it's a business partner, whether it's a intimate partner, communication is key. So if this is something that you want to take to the next level and be the best you can be, whether it be a bodybuilder or become an NBA basketball superstar, I think it's important that you have these conversations early. So whether you've been with this partner for a number of years, I think it's worth sitting down and expressing your goals, expressing what it is you want to achieve and what it's going to entail, and hear their honest feedback. I think it's important to put yourself in the other person's shoes, to have perspective, because often we can get so caught up in our own dream and vision that we forget what it might be like for the other person. So although training must be our do or die thing each and every day, and we're coming home at 9 p.m. and missing out on dinner with our partner, I think it's important to see it from their point of view. So open communication, Be flexible with them as well. So if they understand the importance of the goal and what it means to you, and you guys have an open conversation, I think there's always got to be a little bit of give and take. So let's say you explain to them that you need to train for 2 hours a day and that you are going to be limited at social events, be it with family and friends. Have the conversation with them and hear their opinion. I think where it's harder is where we make assumptions that they know these things, that they know how hard the training's going to be, that they know how fatigued we're going to be. Unless they've done it themselves, they won't. So be open with the communication, have many conversations, be transparent with each other. And ultimately, if there's something that comes up, don't put it off. Like if there's starting to become, a bit of sense of animosity towards maybe the partner's annoyed that you are spending too long in the gym, have a bit of a rule that you guys both bring things to the table when there's an issue that arises, because I forget how the saying goes, but it's something along the lines of like, it's easier to stop a drop of water than it is a rushing river. It's something like that, don't quote me, but address the issues early, have open communication, and let them know how much this goal means to you and what's going to be involved, and hopefully hear their side of things as well, and compromise. There's got to be a little bit of compromise in every relationship. So I think it's important they understand your goals. I think they should understand why it's important to you, but I also think ultimately it's super important that you guys have a bit of give and take with each other. So if your partner says, all right, I understand that you've got to train for 2 hours a day, but it's important for me that we have our dinners together, then you might have to compromise a little bit and train before work. So open communication, be transparent with each other, bring up issues when they're small before they become big ones. And ultimately, I think expressing why that goal is important to you and how much they mean to you as well. Because yes, it's important to do well in things like bodybuilding and stuff, but the stage is always going to be there. Relationships as well, I think you should be careful how much you're going to sacrifice to chase these goals, because at the end of the day, all the trophies, like they collect dust, all the memories of being on stage, they fade. And I think as humans, like relationships and interactions with each other is still like, it should be quite high on our priority list, because when we're on our deathbeds, we want to have those people around us at the end of the day. Not to get all mortal here, but we don't want to be so isolated that we've burnt every single relationship we've got just to pursue this goal. Because when it comes to the end of the day, is it going to be worth it? Well, I guess ultimately only you can decide that. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, another one that I get asked quite often. Have you ever considered moving to the dark side and going enhanced? For those of you who aren't bodybuilders watching this channel, essentially enhanced, performance enhancing drugs, so things like steroids, peptides, and that path. How often have I considered it? Well, the truth of that is not often. Have I considered it? Yes, I've thought about it. The thing that has made me think about it most is how much potential I would have if I went down that path. What could my physique ultimately look like and become being enhanced? And that's always going to be at the back of your mind as a natural bodybuilder. But for me, the answer's always been a hard no. And I'll explain why. Anyone that knows me closely knows that I am an all or nothing guy. When I go in on something, I go 110%. And this is what concerns me if I was ever to go down that path, is I would wholeheartedly do everything I could to get to that Olympia stage. And when making a decision in life, I think it's important to write a pros list and a cons list. And typically if there's more cons than pros, maybe it's not the best decision. And for me, the decision to go down that path and the what ifs of what I could have become never exceeded my cons list, which ultimately came down to my health and longevity. And so very early on in my career, I wanted to see how far I could take things naturally. And then over the years, I was so passionate about that side of things that I essentially ruled it out. Then the ultimate game changer for me was when we had our first child, Banks. And then it was a very hard no as well, because there's something that changes inside of you when you become a parent, where your values shift. And for me personally, and I know a lot of parents out there, your children or child becomes the number one focus. That is your purpose. And for me as a parent, I think it would be a selfish thing for me to do to potentially shorten my lifespan and have a child lose a dad just for me pursuing a goal of mine. That's just my personal opinion. Everyone's got different opinions on this, but my family and my about to be 2 boys are my number one priority. So I would never jeopardize that to chase the goal of getting on the Olympia stage. And I've got plenty of friends and people I know in the industry that are enhanced, and full credit to them and full respect to them, because it's a lot of people make the assumption that it makes things easier. Those guys train just as hard, they diet just as hard, so it's just different forks in the road. But for me personally, there have been thoughts of, I wonder what I would look like, but that has never been high enough for me to ever want to pursue it, because like I said, I'm an all or nothing guy, and I would do absolutely everything it took to get to the Olympia, and I don't think that would be great for me in the long run. Okay, how do you see the landscape of natural bodybuilding today? This is another really good question. And natural bodybuilding, or bodybuilding in general, I think has just exploded in these last few years. I think with things like, TikTok and Instagram just taking off, there seems to be more people on this health and fitness journey. And in particular, the natural bodybuilding scene. From when I first started to where it is now, it's gone crazy, right? The standard is so high now. I remember around the sort of 2010 era, I was competing as a junior and I was able to get glute striations. Back then it was like a little bit more of a rare thing to get glute striations and be in that sort of condition. But nowadays, almost to be top 3, it's a must. It's like compulsory. So the level of conditioning has gone through the roof. The standard, the guys that are now at the top of the game, the levels of muscle that these guys are achieving naturally is like insane. I follow and chat with quite a few guys overseas. There's a few incredible Germans. Obviously the guys in America are amazing too. And the whole natural bodybuilding scene, even in the UK, has exploded. So I think it's only getting bigger and bigger. I think it's only getting tougher. And I think it's great for the sport, because it's proving to people out there that you don't need to rely on going enhanced and using PED. You can get a great result naturally. So I think the industry is just going to continue to boom, especially with this, probably the last decade, how we've shifted so much as that health and fitness space. It's given more exposure to the sport as well. In saying all that though, when I first competed back in 2007, by 2008, 2009, it used to be the INBA here. It was a split show format. So you'd compete in the morning, and that would be like pre-judging, and you'd get the hardcore fans come and watch, and your family and friends. And then you'd come back in the evening and you'd do your routines. Now, the evening was like a massive spectacle. It was like you get people that would come and watch that weren't necessarily even bodybuilding fans. It was almost like going to the movies. And the Norwood Town Hall, I remember being absolutely bricked. The bottom floor was packed, upstairs was packed. So it was still popular back then, but I think the main thing that's changed now, we've got more federations, so there's more options for people to compete naturally. The standard's gotten so much higher. That in itself is just, even for me, doing this for so many years now, it gives me still hope and belief of like, right, maybe I haven't hit my natural ceiling yet, and maybe I do have more, because after doing this for so long, you get less return on your investment in terms of, it might take me 2 years now to add a kilo of muscle. Whereas back when I first started, like those newbie gains, you might add 3 kilos of muscle in 9 to 12 months. So your natural ceiling and where that's at, obviously after training for so long, you don't know if you've hit it or not, but seeing everyone else in the industry and how the standard's just growing inspires me more and more and more to see what I can really do. So hopefully there's a bit left in the tank, and I think the industry is just going to continue to grow and provide more and more options for athletes to excel. Here we go. I took some time off the gym and I recently just came back. How am I smashing my old weights? So essentially, I've trained less, but I've gotten stronger. This can be common if you've been at a point where maybe your stimulus to recovery ratio has not been on par and you've just been hammering yourself in the gym, maybe neglecting your sleep, your recovery, and therefore your progress has stopped a little bit. Often what we'll see in this case is when a person takes a bit of time off, they might go on a holiday, their stress levels might come down, they might get a bit more sleep, and just their overall mindset towards the gym might improve, because it might go from that daily slog of like, I have to train today, to, you know, taking some time off and then genuinely being excited to get back in there. So there's a number of things happening here, but if you have had some time off and you've come back stronger, typically that's saying that maybe you were under-recovered previously, maybe you were overtraining, and now giving yourself the capacity to actually recharge those batteries and recover and bring down the cortisol levels, and plus probably be a little bit more inspired to get back in there. That's one of the reasons why we see some of those lifts going up. So if you're one of those people and it's happened, use that as feedback that maybe you were pushing the envelope a little bit too hard previously, and maybe you need to recover a little bit more. Another question I get asked a fair bit is about veins and vascularity. Probably one of my strengths when I compete is I am quite vascular, and this person has asked, how do I get veins in my arms like you? So let's talk about vascularity. What is it? How do we get more of it? Now, vascularity is, first and foremost, it's just the veins that appear larger and more prominent at the surface of the skin, right? So to get more vascular, first and foremost, we have to be leaner. The less body fat we have, the more visible those veins are. Now, there's a few other things that enhance vascularity. Genetics can be one, of course. Like, some people just generally find it hard to see any veins even when they are super lean. But make sure you are well hydrated, because if you are dehydrated, you have less volume in the blood. Therefore, often it's harder for that blood to fill up those veins. Make sure that you have enough sodium in your diet. You increase your sodium, you increase your blood pressure. When blood pressure goes up, the veins appear larger. Also, if you're in a cold environment versus a warm environment, you know what it's like when you've hopped out of a bath or a shower. That's mainly when we see more vascularity in the body, versus if you've just done a cold plunge, or if it's super cold backstage at a comp, which is always the worst. Those veins do have a habit of hiding. So the warmer the individual, generally the more vascular they are. And that kind of ties in with something else, is generally I find people with a faster metabolic rate, those people that just run a little bit hotter, they also tend to have more veins visible than those people that are a little bit slower on the metabolic side as well. You've got things that can enhance it in the gym, like supplements. Citrulline malate is probably the most tried and tested one. L-arginine as well. There's plenty of pump products you can use nowadays. Glycerol may help, but I think citrulline is a pretty safe bet as well. So ultimately, get lean, stay well hydrated, have enough salt in the diet, keep warm, try maybe 6 grams of citrulline malate prior to your workout, and those veins should be a little bit more visible. Next one here, what are the most common reasons people fail in a calorie deficit, so a fat loss phase, and how do we fix it? It's a great question. I'll tackle this one from a couple of different directions. Now, quite often when people think they're in a calorie deficit, and if they are strict on what they're eating and their weight isn't coming down, then typically they're maybe not tracking something correctly. Maybe they're not measuring the food in the correct state. Maybe they're measuring raw rice weight instead of cooked, or vice versa. Maybe they're snacking on some things subconsciously. It could be the kids' lunches that they're preparing. So they might not be in a true calorie deficit. That is one of the number one things that I see. On top of that, if this individual has got everything down pat and they just can't seem to get a good result, you know, they might lose 1 week, then they fall off the horse and then they put on weight, and then they lose a little bit more weight the next week, and they're just not consistent. They struggle to hit their goals. I think a few things, right? They say nowadays, and it's a very good statement, that the best diet is the one that the individual can stick to. So what do we mean by that? When I used to do my nutritional program, I thought there was like a perfect diet, you know, with the right amount of complex carbohydrates and lower saturated fats, etc., etc. But the truth is, if you prescribe a diet to someone that they don't enjoy, that they can't stick to, it's not going to get them a very good result. So if you're one of those people that struggles and you find that you just continue to maybe have an on week and then an off week, you're a yo-yo dieter, I would look at your nutritional adherence and think, right, what are some foods that I genuinely enjoy, and how can I incorporate these into my diet that's going to allow me to enjoy what I'm eating on a day-to-day basis and not encourage or tempt me to go off track. Now, we have to use a little bit of smarts with this. If you're one of those people that says, well, I love burgers, hot dogs, and donuts, and that's all I want to eat in my diet, you're going to have a hard time with that. Like, technically, you could still lose weight, but what I'm trying to say is you don't have to eat bland for every single meal. Like, nowadays, you can literally, anything that you enjoy, say it's pizza, say it's a gyros, say it's a burger, you could just type into Google or ChatGPT and write, hey, can you give me a low-fat option for this recipe, and watch ChatGPT do its magic. Like, we have more resources on our hands nowadays than ever before to help with this stuff. So you do have to use a little bit of creativity, right? So you don't have to eat plain and boring foods. You can marinate your meats, you can use spices and sauces, they're completely fine. Like, even when I'm prepping for a show, I still use spices and seasonings and marinades right up until show day. There's some things I will eliminate, of course, but make sure that you are on a diet that you can sustain and enjoy. Now, there is a little bit of give and take. There are going to be some things you'll have to remove to get a better result, but it doesn't mean you can't enjoy anything at all. So I think one of the main reasons people fail in that regard with a calorie deficit is they go too bland, they go too boring, they can't stick to the plan and sustain it, and maybe they're not tracking correctly. Maybe they're not including the nibbles here and there. So try that. Make sure that when you are constructing your diet or you're working with a coach, you express to them the foods that you genuinely like, the foods that you dislike. And if you hate seafood and they got whitefish in your plan, just bring it up with them, because ultimately, like I was talking about before, communication's everything. So a couple little tips for sticking a calorie deficit. Make sure the plan is tailored to you and that it is the correct calculations, that you are in a true deficit. Because even if you eat perfectly and you're at a maintenance intake, you're not going to lose weight. So make sure you are in a deficit. Give yourself variety in your foods. Allow yourself to make them interesting, to flavor them so that you don't hate each meal that you're eating. Because if you're not liking them, you'll want to go off plan. And ultimately, be consistent. Give it time. Things don't happen overnight, but one perfect day won't make you lean. 2 perfect days won't make you lean, but when you turn those 2 days into 7 days and you turn the 7 days into 4 weeks, that's when you see the results start to take place. Nutrition for pre-sport or an endurance event, such as running. What to eat to give you fuel without the bloat. This is a pretty simple one. Stick to foods you know, and typically pre-event, the process would start depending on the length of the event, but let's just say it's City to Bay this weekend, it's a 12-kilometer running race. You'd want to start a bit of a carbohydrate load at least a couple of days before. Make sure you're well hydrated. That's one of the biggest things people neglect. But let's just say it's, all right, I'm 2 hours out from my event. It's a footy grand final, it's a City to Bay 12K, it's a jiu-jitsu match. Like, what do I eat? You want to have some easy and fast acting carbohydrates. When I say easy to digest, right? So we want to avoid things that are heavily fibrous. That'll slow down the movement through the GI tract. So think things like white rice over brown rice. Think things like cereals, potentially over, toast and eggs with spinach and mushrooms. Anything that's going to slow down that movement through the digestive tract, generally we want to avoid. Also, pre-event, we don't really need any fats. So you want it to be mainly carbohydrate based. I still think having in some adequate protein with that meal is important, particularly if it's a longer event. It'll help to prevent the muscle becoming catabolic and you burning into muscle tissue. So what would a great meal look like? Let's say you have some 6 rice cakes, you slice up a banana, you have some honey on top. You might pair that up with like a YoPro Perform, like a high protein yogurt, or a WPI shake. Something like that is going to be super easy on the digestive tract. It'll be fast acting carbohydrates. You won't experience any discomfort, and it'll be enough to power you through your event. So again, there are some nuances with that, depending on the length of the event, depending on how many days before you've been carb loading, but stick to something you know that digests easy and well. You don't need to add fats to the meal. That'll just slow down the gastric emptying. Combine some good quality protein with it. Mainly have it carbohydrate based, and avoid things that are heavy fibrous. Okay, final 3. Who's been your favorite leg day partner? Now, I know who wrote this one to me, Jake. Jake, those were the memories back in 2016. I remember it was a Friday night, we'd hit legs together. I know the exact workout, and I think over the years I've been fortunate enough to have quite a few amazing training partners, and there's something that is truly special about having a leg day training partner. The camaraderie that you share, oh no, the coffee's done. The coffee's gone. The camaraderie that you share, there's something special, like I said, about going through that pain together, right? Doing a leg day by yourself is hard and it can be very challenging, but when you've got someone there to push you, it makes it such a better experience. You can spot each other, you can inspire each other. It's easier to let yourself down than it is to let someone else down. So when you know you've got to hit 20 reps, it can be tempting to stop at 15 when it's burning, right? If you've got a training partner there with you that knows you're due to hit 20, trust me, you will get to that 20. You won't want to quit. You won't want to let them down either. So Jake, our leg day trainings have been amazing. Back in 2016 it was, so almost 10 years, but I've had some awesome training partners over the years. If you guys are struggling, maybe with your gym motivation, if you're struggling to make progress, try do a few gym sessions with a training partner. Try get a few spots in the gym. There was a period where, just based on the time of day I was training, I hadn't trained with someone for like, it was 9 months or so, right? And I remember I was in there on a chest day, and I had a friend that came over and spotted me, and you forget how much more you can get from the sets. Even if you train to failure by yourself, having that person there to help you get another like 2 reps per set is a game changer. It can really help you break through plateaus and get much better results. Because if you think about it, if you're doing, say, 10 working sets per per session, and you've got 2 additional spotted reps on each of those sets, that's an extra 20 reps, right? And not just any reps either. They're the reps where you're pushing to that point of failure. So that's the equivalent of like doing another, 8 or so working sets, really, especially when we talk about the effective rep model and how beneficial those last reps are. So training partners are great. Do yourself a favor if you're struggling in the gym, if your motivation's down, get an accountability buddy, get a training partner, and watch those results go through the roof. Best training split for someone that can only train 3 days per week. I think the best training split here would be like an upper-lower hybrid. So 1 day an upper body session where it might have both chest, back, and some accessory work in there with some shoulders and arms. Then I'd have a lower body day, which pretty self-explanatory, everything from the waist down. You could throw some core in on that day as well. And then your third day could be a hybrid day. So that's where you could do like an upper-lower split. That'll give you the best bang for buck in terms of like the amount of time you've got available and the benefit that you'll get out from it. So I would structure it where you might have, say, 6 to 7 exercises, each of those workouts, maybe 3 working sets each. And it might be like an on day, so upper day, then a rest day. An on day, so lower day, and then a rest day. And then that third rotation might be the hybrid. So if you do only have 3 days, make sure you don't do those 3 days in a row. That's when your recovery will be taxed. So try and do it where you have a working day, a rest day, working day, rest day, working day, rest day. And don't forget, like 3 days a week, you can still get results on, especially if you're a newbie, especially if you're someone that hasn't been doing it for a while. And even for us veterans that have been training for years, you can still definitely maintain your muscle mass and strength from 3 sessions a week. Yeah, you might not move forward because of the load and volume your body's used to, but you can certainly maintain. I think that's something that a lot of people underestimate, how little volume you can get away with to maintain your results. To get a result is always going to require a lot more effort, intensity, volume, etc. to get there. Same as like a fat loss journey. If someone wanted to go from 100 kilos to 80 kilos, it's going to require a lot more sacrifice to get down to that 80 kilos, but then to maintain it, it won't require as much. So the same goes for our muscle tissue as well. What it takes to get us there isn't the same amount that it will take us to keep it there. Okay, last one, we'll wrap it up. How do you start again when you fall off the horse? Really good question. I think we would be silly to think that we're never going to fall off the horse in life. So firstly, it's not a matter of if, it's probably a matter of when. Now, when you do fall off the horse, some of the common patterns I see with my clients and other individuals is like, let's say they're trying to be strict on an eating plan. They have a moment of weakness where there's Tim Tams that come into the staff room, all of a sudden they've inhaled a packet. Rather than beating yourself up and letting that one off moment turn into, okay, I've messed up one day, I might as well just start my diet again on Monday. And then you've let go Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just start again fresh. Once it's happened, it's happened. We can't change anything that's behind us. It's like the old saying, you know, the reason why our windshield is bigger on the front than our rear view mirror is you can't drive forward looking backwards. So don't worry about that, just move on. Accept that it's happened. The worst thing that you can do is let one mistake start to compound and turn into 2, 3, 4, etc. So if you fall off the horse, accept it. Have some grace, have some compassion to yourself and just think, right, what's done is done. We get back into it now. I then move forward with my next meal. You don't need to become like they call it exercise bulimia, right? Where if you've eaten 400 calories, you have to go and smash yourself on a piece of cardio for 400 calories. It's not a healthy relationship to get into. So just accept that it's happened, move forward, and don't let one bad moment turn into a week of bad moments, because that is what will really impact your progress, is letting one bad thing turn into multiple, right? So accept, move on, have some compassion and grace, and just keep moving forward. So I hope that makes some sense. Guys, I've had a blast doing this today. It's been a nice change of scenery out of the four walls of the gym. Next week we'll be back in the gym. If you've got anything that you want to see me cover, any questions, whether it's a day of nutrition, that one is coming up as well, please just let me know in the comments below or send me a message. And if there's any questions in here today that I didn't cover that you want answered, honestly, just message me at any stage. Anyone close to me knows that I love this. I love educating. I love passing on some of the wisdom and mistakes I've learned over the last 18 years. So feel free to message me at any stage. So good luck with your journey, guys and girls. Keep kicking ass, and we'll see you on the next one.